we are going to go ahead and get started with internet safety training. Thank you so much, everybody, for being here. We may have some people that join us here if they're running a few minutes late, but thanks everyone for being prompt that's here. And we want to go ahead and introduce ourselves. My name is Kathy Schwartzhoff. I'm one of 3 mentoring coordinators at Helping Services for Youth and Families. I have been with the agency for 29 years full-time and 3 years part-time. And then I have been a certified prevention specialist for 25 years and have been a mentoring coordinator for 23. And some things personal about me is I have a lovely husband, 3 grown children, 3 grandgirls, and 1 grandchild on the way. So that's a bit about me. Brittany, what would you like to share?
Yeah, so my name's Brittany McIntyre. I'm the Dating, Violence, and Stalking Advocacy Coordinator at Helping Services. I've been with the agency since 2015, so 8 years now, and been in this position with the Resource Center for 6 of those years. I also have a pretty awesome husband, 2 kids, bunch of animals. We have a little zoo at our house. And yeah, I was just excited that Kathy let me jump on with her today.
Awesome. Well, we're a team today. So we know that this topic of internet safety is extremely broad. And I don't think anybody could cover it, even if it was an 8-hour training. There would still be things that would be a challenge to cover. But these are the topics that we're going to cover today. First of all, the influence of media on youth, getting into some of the dangers and concerns, looking very closely at digital relationship abuse, and prevention and resource tools for you all. So that is where we are headed today. And before we get into our content, we of course have to do a commercial for youth mentoring because youth mentoring is the group that allows us to do these kinds of trainings. We want to make sure that our mentors are prepared for their job that they're doing, but also helping communities and helping others understand topics that affect youth. And today, I'm not sure if Sam is on. I think she is, but Sam is from our Delaware County office, and she'd like to share just a little bit more about youth mentoring. So Sam.
Yeah, hi everybody. Sam Jenner-John here with Helping Services in Delaware County. A little bit more about youth mentoring. We serve ages 6 to 16. And we work really hard to pair them with trusted adults in the communities. And we have community-based, school-based, and West Delaware here in Manchester has an after-school program, which is great. We have a lot of high school students here in Delaware County that participate with our programs. We just work really hard at finding good matches for these children so that they can strive to be the best versions of themselves and stay away from those risky behaviors.
Awesome. Thank you, Sam. That was great. Good deal. Okay. Now we're going to move into our topics that we're going to be covering, starting with the influence of media on youth. And to first kind of cover that type of thing, we just need to remember that interactions now for youth are mixed with online type of interactions, but also their real world, their everyday in-person world as well. And that includes making friends, that includes going to school, shopping, entertainment, playing games. It's just all part of their daily life. And the exciting part, if you will, about online is that it can be a much broader reach. So for example, a youth could be interacting with somebody in Australia and find out about their habitat and find out about what's in their world. And that's really exciting, but also there are risks involved. Anytime that somebody opens a website, looks at a chat room, is exploring anything online, there are some risks and consequences of those risks that are involved. And so that's where we really want to frame things and be thinking about how these interactions affect youth. And one of the things too about where it says here on the slide that the youth could be attending school online or could be doing research, if you will. And research is kind of a broad term too, because they could be looking up how to do a hairstyle or how to make a kratom capsule or whatever, and discovering things that we always have to be those critical thinkers and realize, is this accurate information and is this something that is helpful and healthy kind of thing too. And then friends, as we know, we all know people, like my sister met her husband online. And so there are friendships and relationships that start online, but also in person. And one of the things I found in my research, according to the National Crime Agency, over a third of young people have started a relationship with someone online. So that's just something to kind of keep in mind. And then too, shopping can be certainly a source of online interaction, including anything that you want to purchase, including drugs as well. And we're going to be talking about that a little bit more later with some things to keep in mind. And as I said earlier, entertainment, there can be videos, apps, chat rooms, music, gaming, podcasts, all kinds of things that are certainly entertaining, but as we said earlier, can have some risks and some consequences. And so you really want to be mindful of those things. And of course, we want to kind of say too that it's not all doom and gloom, because like during the pandemic, how did any of us interact? There was lots of Zoom calls, which we're still doing that. We've learned how to do that well, and that's great. But we need to also have that balance of in-person interaction and online interaction as well. And to give some sense of how much time youth are spending online, children, this statistic shows ages 8 to 12 in the United States spend 4 to 6 hours on average being on a screen, and teens up to 9. And I really like thinking about this from the sense that this is on average, that we also have to think that there are youth who don't have much screen time or little. Then there's the other side where there are youth who are way over this. So a little bit daunting to think about how much time those youth spend on a screen. So from time to time, Brittany and I are going to do a math or a myth or fact that will show you some information, and we're going to ask you to participate either by putting something in the chat or unmuting and telling us what you think. So this particular statistic says throughout a child's life, parents spend on average only 43 minutes talking about online safety to their children. Do you feel like this is a myth or a fact? And again, if you want to unmute and say myth or fact, or if you want to put it in the chat, hopefully somebody can see that chat because I can't see it so well.
I've got it, Kathy. We've got a bunch of facts coming in. Fact, 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 fact.
Well, let's check and see what it is. Oh, hooray, it's a fact. You guys really very good. And you know, you think about that last slide that we just saw, we as adults really need to step it up, Because if those youth are spending an average of 6 hours, 9 hours in front of a screen, and we only in their lifetime spend 43 minutes, it's time for us to get some work done.
Yeah, we need to do better.
Yes, and we're giving you tools today, so that's really, really helpful. So kind of getting into some of the dangers and concerns that folks can have is, first of all, young people are very vulnerable to what they see and what they hear. And the power of belonging and fitting in, not being embarrassed, are huge developmental appropriate kinds of things for youth. And so when they see a constant presence of seeing people using drugs or partying, it really desensitizes them to think that that behavior is appropriate. So according to a study by the Addiction Center, 90% of kids who were surveyed saw photos of their peers online drinking and smoking before they were 16. Nearly half of all those teens that saw those pictures perceived that the kids in the photos are having a good time. And teens who view these types of photos are 4 times more likely to drink alcohol and 4 times more likely to use marijuana, 3 times more likely to have consumed alcohol compared to the kids who had not seen those photos. So social media posts showing young people partying is certainly more prevalent and post-worthy, if you will, than it is for somebody showing a picture of a sober night with their friends. And ads certainly add to this as well. Manufacturers of drugs, alcohol, vaping products oftentimes depict or try to market, to youth and to teens. And seeing continued ads and postings with everything in a positive light normalizes the brain. So this vulnerable population has increased exposure to drinking and using drugs, and they think that this is just okay to do. And another thing we wanted to note too, that many digital ads use celebrities to sell their products, and research has shown that advertising may be responsible for up to 30% of adolescent tobacco and alcohol use. That's according to the Addiction Center. And another thing we just mentioned was the glamorizing of substance use, so that those celebrities like Justin Bieber and Cardi B and Drake, just a few, showing them partying, getting high, having a good time on many social media platforms, again, makes that feeling of the youth to say, this is an okay behavior. If they do it, I can do it. And I want to be like Justin Bieber, so I want to be doing this behavior as well. So one thing too we just wanted to share was, again, it's a marketplace to purchase drugs, and it can seem like it's a safer way to get drugs rather than going through a dealer. It could be less intimidating because you're just on your phone and you're doing it at home and you're not meeting them in a weird place or something like that. And it certainly can feel like it's easier than using a dealer. Some things to be mindful of is if you watch your browsers to see what activity there is in there, the browser history, I should say. Note if the youth is being secretive about things, locking doors with their computer or phone in their room, going through a lot of money, and of course, behavior change related to substance use. But also another thing to keep in mind is monitoring or looking at packages that are coming that you see delivered, or the youth leaves and comes back with the package kind of thing, could certainly be something that alludes to the fact that they are purchasing some drugs online. And some information to this FMO. Do many of you know what that meant? Because I had no idea. I saw it in some of my research and I was like, what does that mean? And it's the fear of missing out. So again, what we already talked about is seeing people having fun, doing things that look like they're fun and having a good time is something that is a huge influence for those for young people. And the statistic that is shown here about the 97%, according to a study conducted by the National Center for Biotechnology Information, 97% of alcohol-related posts of youth on Instagram and Facebook showed alcohol in a positive context. So seeing those images can lead the youth to depression and many other things, which is the next area that we're going to cover after we look at this real quick statistic. This was a study that was done with 2,000 young people, and they were asked about their drug use and their social media habits. And so 70% said that they use social media on any given day. And you can see here, those youth who are using are 5 times more likely to buy cigarettes, 3 times more likely to drink, 2 times more likely to use marijuana. So there's a huge connection between substance use, could be turning into misuse, and being online. And then the next area that we want to cover is there's certainly a connection between, it's an undeniable link between social media use and negative mental health, including low self-esteem. So that when a teen is struggling with emotional problems, and they will often turn to drugs or alcohol use as a way to cope with the situation. And frequently checking social media platforms and comparing yourself to some of those images can really lead to depression and some other, certainly unhappiness and feeling isolated as well. And it will affect your self-esteem and also can lead to some eating disorders and sleep disturbances and things like that. So an estimated 20% of children who spend 3 or more hours a day on social media exhibit symptoms of poor mental health. So, and to thinking about body image, certainly seeing those beauty standards or those, this is what a body should look like type of thing can certainly affect, as we said, their self-perception, and can have youth feel like they can turn to drugs or do other risky behaviors that can cause concerns as well. So, what can we do as adults? We can certainly talk about appropriate online connections, which the rest of this training is going to help with that as well. Check in with youth regularly about their life, their friends, their school, what their extracurricular activities are, you know, who they're hanging out with, who's the hot guy, who's the person that, you know, is the know-it-all. Just talk to them about what's in their life. Talk about dangers and concerns that you have related to substance misuse or any kind of risky behavior. Empower that youth with tools to be a critical thinker, and encourage positive, healthy relationships and be an approachable adult. So those are just some real brief bullet points to kind of get you started with the idea of here's some things that I can do as an adult. Next, we're going to do our next myth or fact. teens on average send 30 text messages per day. What do you think?
What do we think? Yeah, fact.
Fact.
More from somebody. We got somebody else saying fact. Myth, 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 myth. More from myth, more. All right, we can go ahead and click her, Kathy.
What a nice mixture there.
We did. It is a
Yeah.
myth. So teens are actually sending on average around 60 texts per day. Girls text more than boys typically, so they're saying that girls are sending between like 90 and 100, and boys are sending between 40 and 50. But either way, whatever you fall in that spectrum, it's a lot of texts. It's a lot of time being spent on their phones for sure. All right, so we are going to talk about digital abuse. This is something that I talk with teens about. I go into the schools all the time and we spend a lot of time talking about digital abuse. It is, when it comes to dating violence and unhealthy behaviors with teens, this is by far the most heavily used tactic that they're experiencing. So it's definitely a big topic, and you can click to the next one, Kathy. So digital abuse can look a lot of different ways. So for harassment, maybe that person is getting insulting messages sent to them, text to them, maybe insulting Instagram posts, or that constant contact where that partner is calling them or texting them continually, always feeling like they need to know where they're at, what they're doing, who they're with. And that's just, unfortunately easy for them to do, because with cell phones and technology, they're constantly connected and they have that ability. It can also go into the monitoring with their phones. So whether that be, checking their text messages or their DMs to see who they're talking to, who they're chatting with, maybe like GPS tracking. A lot of teens, I always ask the question of who has Snapchat, and every single hand in the room goes up. So we talk about ghost mode on Snapchat, which is it blocks their friends from being able to see their location. Because when a teen uses Snapchat, the automatic default setting is that ghost mode is off. So any of the friends in their Snapchat friend list have access to their location through that app. And that's, it's just not necessary that all these people need that, that access to that information. So we talk about, certain people editing it so that only, parents and close friends have that information, just to help limit that tracking ability. There also can be a lot of the coercion involved, which is a lot of sexting, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. Revenge porn. So if they've got a sext or an explicit image on their phone, the threats with that, like if you break up with me, I'm going to post this picture of you. I'm going to post this video of you. I'm going to post this story about you that you don't want other people to know, as a way to kind of manipulate and control how the relationship progresses. And then just that overall control, right? So they're demanding that they know who they talk to. They're limiting who they have access to. So maybe they're not allowed to text their friends anymore. They're not allowed to talk to their friends. And then that constant communication to know who and what is kind of going on in their lives. So it can be a pretty broad thing. And it's happening a lot. Like I said, it is the most common form of dating violence that's reported. So these numbers came from a study of 5,500 middle school and high schoolers, and 29% of the girls had said they've experienced digital abuse or victimization online, as well as 23% of the boys. So between, about 1 in 3, 1 in 4 teens are experiencing it. But it's rarely happening by itself. So it's the most common form that's happening, but only 4% of teens report that that was the only type of dating violence or dating abuse they were experiencing. 50% said that they were also experiencing physical violence along with the digital abuse. And about 80% said they also were experiencing that in-person emotional abuse or emotional control along with it as well. But with the access that teens have to the internet and the phones, that's just the easiest way for them to exhibit that control. So I'm not surprised to see that it's, you know, the highest used way to report that victimization. So if you're working with a teen, you have a teen in your life, there are, you know, things that they can look out for with digital abuse, which is, you know, can be very similar to some of the other types of abuse they may be experiencing. But if you're noticing a noticeable increase or decrease in the time that they're spending online, maybe you've got a teen in your life that every day when they come home from school, they go online and they play like Fortnite or something online live, and suddenly they're not doing that anymore. So you've noticed a change in that. That could be a sign that something is happening, something's going on with that. So also some moodiness. So if they're seeming angry, upset, distant, especially if you're noticing that soon after they've been, you know, on their phone or online or on the internet, that could definitely be a sign that something is not going well for them over social media or online as well. And then the secretive and the isolation, I think they kind of go together. But like Kathy had said, you know, checking in with who they're talking to, what they're doing online, things like that. If you've got a teen or a child that's reluctant to tell you who they're talking to or what they're talking about, what they're doing online, or is like making it a point to isolate themselves when they're online. So they're closing their doors when they're on the computer or on their phones. Maybe they're changing their passwords. Maybe you've noticed that they're getting a lot of phone calls, and every time they get a phone call, they're leaving the room to answer it. Things like that are all definitely signs that there may be some sort of abuse or control going on over the phones or over social media. All right, sexting, always a fun one to discuss, and again, something that we talk about in the schools a lot. So sexting is basically the sending and receiving of sexually explicit texts. It can be pictures, it can be videos, it can just be texts, whatever it may look like, but typically with teens, it's pictures. So in that same study with the 5,500 middle school and high schoolers, sexting was also discussed. And one of the questions was, why are teens choosing to send texts as frequently as they are? And these were the three most common answers that they got. So flirting, right? Many teens were just saying that in a relationship at that point in their lives, that sexting was a normal way to interact with their partner. They felt it was a common way to show affection or to show that they were, you know, trying to be an active participant in the relationship, and just felt like it was the okay or the right thing to do. Many also reported obligation with their sexting, which is kind of where that coercion came in with the digital abuse. Where they reported feeling an obligation from their partner, that if they're going to be in that relationship and they're going to participate in that they are obligated to send these texts or to receive these texts without complaint. And then it also can be seen as a safe sex option. So if you have a partner that is wanting to go further than the other partner is wanting to go, they may turn to sexting as an option because it can be viewed as safer. There's no chance of pregnancy, there's no chance of STIs, things like that. So they were reporting using it to appease their partner, to kind of meet in the middle, compromise on what they were comfortable with in their relationships. But overall, sexting was kind of reported as just a normal part. That's all right, Kathy, you can go. A normal part of of teen relationships. So this study was taken in 2019. So pre-COVID, pre us all switching to online everything and anything. So my guess is these numbers are low for what it is now. But in 2019, they did a study for 12 to 17-year-olds, and there were roughly 5,000 youth in this study. 14.3 reported sending a sext at some point or another, and 23% of teens received a text or received a sext. So and like I said, these numbers are, I'm guessing, low if we were to do this study again. Right. Next myth or fact then. 42% of kids have a phone by the age of 10. What do we think? We got fact, 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 fact. Oh, we got somebody wanting in. We got one myth came in. Fact. Myth. So we got a little mix here. You can go ahead and click it, Kathy, if you want. So that one's a fact. They're saying that, about 42% have a phone by the age of 10. And about 20% of kids have a phone by age 8. But what they're noticing now is that parents are skipping the dumb phones, or whatever we're calling them, and they're not getting like the kid-friendly flip phones or anything anymore. They're going straight to smartphones. They're going straight to that social media number or social media access phones, rather than like the Gab phones or whatever that kids used to get back in the day. And by 12, I believe it was 70% of teens have phones, and by 14, 95% of teens have phones. And Colleen, I agree with you. I would have guessed that number to be higher. My son's got a bunch of 8-year-old friends. I know a few of them have phones. I know he's told me that he already feels left out because some of his friends on the bus have phones and he doesn't. And my husband and I have arguments about what age he can get one, just because that's one of the issues that parents have in these studies, is that they don't want that FOMO, right? That fear of missing out is a real thing for these kids, and parents feed into it of, I don't want my child to feel less than or feel left out because other kids have this access and they don't. So right now it's at 10, but I'm guessing that number will continue to get younger and younger as we go forward. All right, so let's talk about some prevention and resources. Maybe because smartphones are the only option. Yeah, absolutely. I know they still do have like the Gab phones or whatever, or, some parents go with like the children's smartwatches where they can call like 10 numbers and text those 10 numbers or whatever. But yeah, flip phones are pretty much obsolete at this point and are leaving us with next to no option on what we can provide the kids with besides the smartphones. All right, prevention. How can we try and avoid these issues online? Communication, right? Just like Kathy talked about, if we're only doing 43 minutes of conversations with kids, recognizing that that's not enough and that we need to offer more ongoing conversations. These can't be one and done talks. They've got to be revisited and reviewed, and just to let that child know that you're always that approachable adult, right? We're going to have these conversations. I'm going to be a safe person you can talk to. Being non-judgmental as you have these conversations, especially if a teen is talking to you about a situation that they're experiencing online, because then you're gonna be a safe person to continue to come to if you're letting them open up that way. Involvement in their online lives is huge too. So if your kids will let you be their friend on social media, like their posts, follow their posts, comment on them, especially teens, they may not love that their mom or their dad or their mentor or whatever is commenting on all of their posts, but it lets them know that you're active and you're interested in what they're doing online. But it also reminds them that that you're watching, right? That you're seeing the things that they're doing, you're seeing the things that you're posting. And hopefully that gives them pause to think about, all right, am I being appropriate online? Because there are people watching, there are people that are going to see those things. And then obviously there are parental controls that can set screen limits and privacy settings, things like that, that we will touch on in the next slide. Perfect. So almost every device that you can get now, computers, tablets, phones, PlayStations, switches, whatever these devices that teens and kids are using, almost all of them have built-in safety features in them. So like, for example, Google has Google Safe Search. So if your computer has Google set as its default browsing server, you can go into the Google settings and activate the Safe Search option, and that will limit the results that you're going to get when you do a Google search. So it'll hopefully, limit inappropriate websites that could come up. If you're doing an image search, it'll limit what type of like sexually explicit images could come up, things like that. So that's a super easy one to get on, especially if you have a shared computer in the home or for younger kids. And these are a lot more handy when this is for younger kids and there's like a shared tablet or a shared computer that you have access to regularly, because then you have the control to make sure these settings are in place. So if you've got like a shared iPad or whatever, each person in the home can have their own user account on it, and your account can be wide open, but then you can activate the Google Safe Search or the built-in safety settings in that program for the child's user account. But again, these are really only useful for devices that you have access to. When they're having their own phones or they have their own tablets, things like that, it can be just as easy for them to shut these devices off as it was for you to turn them on. So that can be when more intense, like third-party parental controls would be beneficial. All right. So these three, we've got Bark, Custodio, and Net Nanny. I found these three were the most heavily used, are the most well-rated third-party parental controls. All three of them do have a cost to them, and it's a cost per device that they're monitoring. But they all have very good reviews and good levels of access in them. So like, for example, they can monitor the searches that are going through, the text messages that are being sent for, inappropriate, they call them alert words or sexual content. Like, for example, if a parent uses Bark and a child texts something with the word drugs in it, the parent would get an alert text on their phone that their child was engaging in they call them an alert word. So, things like sexually explicit words, some swear words were on there. And then you can also put what alert words you want in. So if it's not one that they have built in, but you have something that you want to monitor, you can put that in and they can notify you of that as well. And then obviously all three of these can also track their location through their GPS as well. And then they can also set screen limits. So some devices have just like a full screen limit where if you hit that 2-hour mark or whatever it's set at, that device shuts off. But with these more intensive parental controls, you can go in and identify which apps you want controls on, which games you want limits on, and you can set individual times for each one. So if your teen spent 30 minutes on TikTok that day, Bark or Custodio is going to block TikTok from being able to access until the next day because they've met their limits. And then obviously they can go in and you can block specific websites if you don't want your children accessing them, as well as whole website categories for, mature games, sexually explicit content, things like that are obviously available on there as well. But yeah, they do do a lot of the work for you, but there are still some issues that come up with these third-party parental controls. The next one, Kathy. So kids are smart, right? And they're savvy, and they know how to work what they need to work. So we can only monitor what we know exists. So with these apps, you need access to their passwords to be able to track, like if you want to track your child's Instagram or whatever, you need that password to that Instagram account. And your child may give you that and you have access then. But a lot of times kids have what they call their PG Instagram that your parents may know about, and then they may have their Instagram that their friends know about, where maybe their name is backwards, or some way that they have it so that it's not quite as easily searched. So obviously we can't monitor those sites if we don't have access or we don't know they exist. And then they say that by around age 12, each generation is more tech savvy than the last. So if about age 12, you're starting to think like, oh, my kid's getting into that preteen, teenage, I really want to monitor what they're doing online. So we're utilizing these parental controls, and we're going in and we're utilizing and trying to put them in place. Kids can just as easily figure out how to turn them off, or how to get around them, or what they needed to do if they really wanted to search something or to look something up. And one thing with that though is, if a kid has another Instagram account, or they're trying to get around a parental control, it doesn't automatically mean that child is up to no good, right? Kids, teens, they want privacy, they want trust, they want respect, just like we as adults do. So that may be just their way of trying to pull forth some autonomy and be able to feel like they've got that privacy in their lives. And I think that's why it really just goes back to that communication and letting them know that you're that person that they can talk to, so that hopefully you don't have to go through all of these hurdles and have to go through all these steps if they're going to find a way around it, if they wanted to anyway. Trying to think of anything I got to add to that soapbox. I don't think so. You can go to the next one, Kathy. All right, so it looks like we are at the end of that one. We're done a little early.
Yeah,
Kathy, do you want to talk about your eval?
Yeah, we need people to go to the evaluation link that is in the chat or on your screen. We would love for you to do it right now, because then it's done. And so if you would go ahead and put that into your browser, and or just go to the chat and click on it, and it should go right to the link. And there's only a few questions. It asks you about what your knowledge is related to, since you did the training, what you liked about today, and any comments that you'd like to give. So we really encourage you to do that right now. And I would go back to our handy dandy music, but I'm gonna share just a few other things as you're working on that evaluation. The next
We do have
thing,
a question in the chat as well.
oh, I can't see it, so go ahead.
It looks like it says, I do not have TikTok or Snapchat, but my child and most of her friends do. It's suggested I get it just to follow her activity. I would not know how to use TikTok, but maybe this could be a conversation starter interaction of her showing me how to use it. I would say absolutely. If your child is willing to let you follow them, interact with them. Again, it shows that you're there and that you're watching, and it can help give her pause on things that she may be posting or things she may be doing on those apps. But I also think that when we're in the know or whatever with the things that they're doing online, the things that are trending, it also makes you seem more approachable, right? Like when I go into the schools, especially with the boys, like the 8th grade, 9th grade boys, they may feel like this is not a conversation. Like, what would you know about this So I like to talk about, like, if we're talking about self-care, we'll talk about Fortnite. And my son has taught me all things Fortnite, so I can talk it with the best of them. And, so I'll have those conversations and we'll talk about the things that they're seeing or doing on there. And it just makes it feel like, all right, she actually knows what's going on. It's relevant. So it's definitely a conversation starter. And then, yeah, having her show you how to use it. Absolutely. That way you can get all the tricks and tips for the rest of us. Anything you'd add to that, Kathy?
No, I wholeheartedly agree with what you said. I love the idea too of the younger person teaching the other person, how to use it and that kind of thing. Because yeah, they'll teach you things that you wouldn't know about. And that's good too. And like you said, having that ability to talk about apps that connect with them, I think that's great. Yep. So just one more thing, and if somebody can give me an idea of, are you feeling like you're done with the evaluation or where you're at with that? That would be great. We do have another training coming up April 25th on the effects of alcohol on young adults. And that's being researched by Luther College nursing students. They're going to be talking about statistics related to local use, state statistics, national statistics, and then talking about the physiological impact, including the impact on the brain of a young person, looking at prevention strategies, how to help a friend, and resources. So those are coming up, and if we have your contact information, we will send you information about that training. And if we don't have your contact information, you can put that in the chat, or you can email Brittany or I, and we're on this next slide too. So any other further questions or comments that you have?
Got a couple people that are done with the eval, and then trying to get a couple other people that wasn't able to click on it into it in the chat.
Great. And I'll also be sending out the link again for the evaluation, so that if you didn't have an opportunity to do it or you had trouble with it, you'll have that at your email. So any other thoughts or questions or any sharing that anyone would like to do?
Thank you, ladies.
Thank you.
Thanks for attending, and it looks like we're done just a few minutes early, but that way you can have a little extra time in your day and enjoy the rest of your day.